Welcome to Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. Decoding the beliefs and strategies of global experts to give you an updated mindset to make the most of modern life. Hosted by the UK's most in-demand and highest paid hypnotherapist, Adam Cox.
This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today, we have a spiritual mentor, a life coach, and a self-defined lover. It's Olivia from Bolivia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here, Adam.
Great to have you on the show. So, in terms of most people, I guess, would understand what a life coach is. I think there's enough life coaches around that people at least have a frame of reference. This definition of a spiritual mentor, I think in the past, perhaps people look to religion to kind of think of, right, that's their person for spiritual guidance. And then perhaps, a godmother or a godfather or something like that. Do you think, first of all, what is a spiritual mentor to you, and what's the modern day need for that spiritual mentor?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I believe that in this modern day, life that we have, there's so much chaos, there's so much stress, and our needs have changed. We are living in a really fast-paced world. And because of that, the high demand for tools that allow us to come back to our center. And what's our center? It's a place of peace, of calmness, of trust in life, in our skills, in our community to support us. And so the need for spiritual tools is very, very present these days. And so, we used to go, like you said, to churches or a synagogue or whatever your choice is, but it has become to a certain degree, obsolete. Like the needs that we have to make, not even combat, it's not the word, but to ease the levels of stress have changed. And so I believe that the practices of mindfulness, meditation, yoga, are on the rise. More and more people are looking at these alternative ways of living in order to make front to that chaos and that stress.
I think in the past, there was a huge overlap between religion and spirituality. And it was almost that was the monopoly on spirituality was in religion. But some of the most spiritual people that I know now are atheists. They don't believe in any dogmatic religion, but they're very spiritual. They believe in the ability to kind of do good things happen, things like that. As a hypnotherapist, I believe that, what we thought of as praying to a god is really accessing the resources within your own subconscious mind to get you in resourceful states. So I think there's principles behind some of the religious tools, but not necessarily that religion is the answer. Do you think we're moving in a world where the rise in secularity and the distrust of religions actually is naturally leading to people discovering their own form of spirituality?
Absolutely. And I would say it's because we have seen how manhandled religion is. Because like you said, the principles of any religion are love and trust and, you do unto others as you would unto yourself. So the principles, the core values are still beautiful and untouched. However, in any religion you find it has been very manhandled. And so that makes it so that the average person loses faith, and then they start to question and say, well, if it's not that, and that's what I used to trust in, then what can I trust? And as you said, spirituality, the way that I understand it is, if we break it down, the word is spirit, and spirit comes from the energy, the emotions. It's the emotions that are our internal GPS system. And so when we feel good, we know, oh, I am on track because I feel peaceful, because I can rest, I can sleep. I wake up and I'm refreshed. I have energy to start my day. And when there is an absence of that, that is when we know that we are in a deep state of chaos, disconnect. There's anxiety, depression, all sorts of addictions. And we know this is not the way, right? So going back to it, spirit is to inspire, to feel, like there is space in life. And so I believe that religion to some degree gives us a structure to follow, but that spirituality is then for the courageous ones, the ones who are, you know, out in open field and like, okay, I want to understand more about who I am as a human being, right?
Absolutely. And I think some of the big scandals within all religions, pretty much. I mean, I think if I had to choose a religion right now, it would probably be Buddhism or perhaps Hare Krishna, because you don't see suicide bombers, Hare Krishnas. You don't see, you know, kind of terrorists under the guise of Buddhism, but you do see Christianity, you know, Islamic religions using their religion as a reason for huge amounts of violence, harm, you know, or control or manipulation. And I think a lot of people that they look at that and they think, well, this seems to have been, you know, almost kind of repurposed for an agenda rather than what it was really designed to do. And people are discovering their own forms of spirituality that may not have, you know, a name attached to it, but it's their own interpretation, their own belief systems. What do you think are the most empowering beliefs that for those people that are using spirituality in a way that serves them, that benefits them? Have you noticed any common beliefs that are shared across those people?
Absolutely, which is do no harm. You know, this like live and let live, for example. It's like because these people detach from the need to label, they also, I believe, have a high sense of respect for other people who choose to live their lives however they choose. I was having this conversation just like last night with my sister because she says, you know, I am an atheist. Like, I don't have to label things. I don't have a name for a God. I don't know if it's female or male or if it's up in the sky or where it is. But I believe that, for example, she's a vegan. And it doesn't mean that vegan people are the most, no, it's no. However, she says, I do believe that if we can sustain ourselves and we can, you know, eat healthy and have all our nourishment, why should we go and harm animals? So it has been her choice to become a vegan, you know, and also because, well, she said at the moment I stopped drinking milk, I noticed a huge change in my skin, my energy levels. And so she does it by choice and conviction. And she's been doing it for like 7 years now. So live and let live is definitely high up there, which is I don't need to label things as long as I'm not intruding in your space, I'm respecting you and you respect me. This idea that we can all just be happy with our own choices, I think that that's pretty strong in the spiritual community.
Yeah, I mean, it's that idea of kind of kindness, empathy, you know, understanding, respect, which is actually the opposite of what you get at the extremities of any religion. It's very dogmatic. Anyone that isn't with us is against us, is very divisive, which is the very opposite of live and let live. It's kind of like play by our rules or you're out. You know, it's that kind of being exiled from the tribe. And if you look at, you know, particularly the religions in the Middle Ages, you know, if you question God, you'd be hung, you'd be, you know, sentenced to death. You know, the punishments for blasphemy were kind of very, you know, kind of harsh. So we are in a more free world at the moment. And you touched on that kind of element of love. You defined yourself as a lover. What would you say? I mean, the word lover obviously evokes different reactions. You know, for some people, you know, it's going to be, you know, laced with judgment. You know, when you introduce yourself in that way, what are the typical judgments that you get back from that? You know, the projection of other people's perspectives.
Well, first of all, I love having a reaction on people, like, because, you know, they don't expect you to be like, oh, hi, I'm Olivia from Bolivia and I'm a lover. They think like, oh, you get paid like for sex? Like what? You know, it's connected, like you said, to maybe porn or whatever, you know? And I love it because then people pay attention. The moment they're like, whoa, triggered? Hang on a minute, can I, what? Explain it some more. And love is a frequency. It's an energetic frequency, you know, as is hate, as is anger, as is there is a frequency to love. And love is what heals. Love is healing. Love is the miracle in itself. And speaking of religion, when we look at the depiction, for example, of Jesus Christ, you know, there's in Spanish, it's called Jesús de la Misericordia, you know, and it's this very attractive dude, you know, who is standing there and he has one hand that is open like this, left hand, and the other one has either a sign like this or something like this. So it is very much receiving energy and giving off energy, you know, and it usually you see him with either a halo, like an angel, or you see the aura. They depict Jesus with this shining light around him, a glow of light. And sometimes, especially in this Jesus de la Misericordia that I'm mentioning, there is a heart. And in his heart, there is like a ring of thorns around it. And then there is a little fire, like some flames. And this is symbolic of the transmutation that happens with the death of the ego, and it's carrying your cross, and it is suffering, but offering that suffering for a higher purpose. So it is that death of the ego. And it is very tied, as you were saying, with religions, because where there is the ego, there is a desire, a thirst for control. And then therefore there is this submission and dominance, and there is duality. So we go into duality, and yoga, which is what I teach, and part of being a spiritual mentor is the path of union. It is understanding that I am you and you are me. And at our core, all we want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be at peace. We want to feel loved. We want to feel safe. If we have those basic needs met, we experience life as something beautiful. So going back to it, that to me is the meaning of being a lover. It's being able to, with the fire and the energy, the frequency of love, transmute and alchemize any lower frequencies, hate, anger, whatever, lack of jealousy, into higher frequencies, bliss, joy, peace. So that's what, to me, being a lover means, is being able to feel and then become that channel, that vehicle of transformation, so that anything that comes to you in the form of poison is transmuted into medicine.
That makes sense. And I think when you talk about love, I think for a lot of people, love is inextricably linked with conditions. Most love has kind of strings attached. There's kind of conditions to it. So you introducing yourself as a lover is naturally going to evoke that part of people that say, what's the catch here? What do I have to kind of exchange to get, that frequency, that kind of power of love? What's your thoughts on just the nature of how much conditions are attached to that frequency of love?
Because love is such a highly used word, it has also lost a lot of its value. And what comes to mind right now is the differentiation between second chakra love and fourth chakra love. So when we talk about energy, we must mention the chakras. And the chakras is the system that, it comes from the Vedas, that teaches us about these frequencies. And so these are vortexes of energy. The word chakra means wheel. And what people consider love as conditional love comes actually from the second level chakra, which is called Swadhisthana. So at the level of Swadhisthana, the love is, I give you, you give me. It's romantic love. It's like, oh, we go on a date. It's like the puppy love. Oh, he gives me butterflies in my belly. That's the kind of love. And it's also the love of like the sexual love. And because of that, there is let's say the light aspect of it and the shadow aspect of that love. So it can be very beautiful and romantic and pink and fluffy, but it can also be that dark love of jealousy, of control, of lack of trust, of cheating, of deceit. So it has the light aspect and the shadow aspect. We live in a world of duality, so everything has both its parts.
Yeah.
Whereas at love, at the level of anahata, which is your fourth chakra, that is the love of Gandhi. That is the love of Buddha. That is the love of Jesus Christ, the healer. Like in the Bible, he goes around and does miracles. All he needs to do is just tell the man, like, stand up, you can walk. And the man is all of a sudden cured, right? So the love at the fourth level of the fourth chakra is the unconditional love, which is, I want you to be happy. I was married for 7 years. And when I decided to part ways, well, it was a mutual decision, but because we grew in very different, directions, it was very much unconditional love, because he looked at me and he said, I want you so much to be happy, even if that means that you're going to be happy without me. But I really want you to be happy. And it was really tough to walk away from that relationship, because I felt like, wow, here is a person who will allow me all the space in the world. Like, that cage was not closed. It was never even, so I'm free to leave and walk away. And I had to, because I had a calling of service that was greater than that second level love, which would be like, oh yeah, we have a family, and nothing wrong with it. I think it's beautiful to have a family and have children and whatnot. But my calling was different. My calling was always a quest of, I want to be of service to humanity. And that's what I'm doing now through the life coaching that I do, is I work with the individual to shift those energy blockages that might be there impeding for that person to experience those higher level energies. And so when they come and we undo the blocks, we unblock all that energy, and then the person is able to come back to heart center and to remember that actually I am not my story. The story is the things that happened to me, but I get to choose. So it's called From Story to Journey, because the journey means that you created every step of the way. So does that make sense? The differentiation between second and fourth
It
level?
totally does. Yeah, there is that kind of almost like an exchange of value, kind of element, the fourth chakra, and then you're saying was it the other way around? The second, which one
The
is
second one is transactional. The fourth one
transactional?
is, yes, the fourth one is
Unconventional.
open heart. No agenda. Just I give for the sake of giving because it makes me happy to give.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and that element of the yin and the yang of duality, you see that in cases sometimes. The same ingredient that can cause passion can also create arguments and that kind of thing. We talked about judgment before, and in relationships there is lots of societal expectations, life scripts that we're kind of given, and we say, right, you do this and then you do that and you do that. When you came to that decision that you had to end, your relationship, I'm assuming that you faced criticism or judgments about that. How did you reconcile that, and how did you have it work for you rather than against you?
In my case, and it's so interesting you mentioned this, there was this burning fire in me. It's almost like it didn't really matter. It's like when people use this term, oh, you're so lucky because right now I get to, I own my time. I am location independent. I travel the world. I live like I'm living the life, in the eyes of so many people. And I truly am. And I'm very grateful. And I know now how to be a conscious creator and manifest more of that, which I do want. But it wasn't always like that. And I do remember many times where I just needed to like focus on courage because fear was so ever present, and it was the unknown, because it's very safe to stay in your confined, comfort zone. But to step out of the comfort zone and say, I have no, pardon the word, but I have no fucking clue where I'm going. I don't, where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do. But I have this fire that's leading me. And because I've always been very connected to source, I would say. So in those moments where I've been so, if you want to say like blind and just not really knowing, I've always known to close my eyes, to go within and to ask for guidance. And because of that, I think that I have received like just the next step. Like, here's your next step. You need to go and talk to that person. Or, oh, you might want to apply for that job. And that has taken me to the next country and the next. And so things have unfolded and opened up in such a way that I have always felt held, and even through fear, I've known it is working for me, not against me. And it's been scary many times, it hasn't been all, ooh, because that's how we shape ourselves. The diamond is charcoal, but then you get to work it, and through the fire, you burn it and it becomes this, exquisite gem. And so to become a gem of a person in terms of energy, I'm talking not about physical like looks and whatnot, but it also affects you, because when your energy is so radiating and glowing and vibrant, you can't help but look good too. Like, people want to know, like, what do you do? It's like yoga, tantra, meditation, exercise, alchemizing all the time, transmutation of energy, so that you're never really stuck for very long in fear, in doubt, in jealousy, and all of these low vibrations. It doesn't mean we don't feel it, but it's a choice. And we become so, so good at understanding when it's present that we get ourselves out of the funk. I say ourselves, like light workers, shadow workers. We know how energy works. When you do not know how energy works, that's when people feel stuck. That's when people feel like, man, why am I here again? Why am I living this dynamic again? You know, it's a new person, new husband, new relationship. And oh, he's an alcoholic again. Oh, he's, domestic violence again. So feeling stuck is very much not really understanding how energy works.
Yeah. And it's also looking outwards rather than looking inwards, because there are two different types of security. There's the security of extrinsic things, how much money you have in the bank, or, how much, physical assets that you have. But then there's the type of security that you're talking about, which is just trusting that things are going to be okay. And that second type of security is infinitely better because it keeps you in a resourceful state. Whereas if you're looking outwards and you're saying, okay, well, I'm now dependent on that job or that career or that person, that kind of puts you in a very vulnerable situation if you believe it to be true. And when we're talking about the inner work, what do you mean by that? Because you've used phrases like inner work, shadow work. To a person listening that might not be familiar with those terms, what does that mean?
Inner work is becoming aware, becoming a conscious observer, becoming a loving witness of your tendencies, of your emotions, of your choices in life. When we are not in that state, when we have not practiced, it's like going to a gym. If you've never worked your muscles, then you can't even lift, the slightest thing, because it's like, oh, you don't have the strength. You haven't, faced to become resilient. You haven't faced adversity. When you do, that's why the analogy I always use with my clients is this is a spiritual gym. I don't want to call it boot camp, but it's a spiritual gym. You get to exercise muscles, spiritual muscles that you didn't even know were there. Like you said, empathy, courage, resilience, the ability to breathe through something that's like really, really testing you, triggering you. If not, you are spiritually weak. You have no ability to face life. Something happens and, oh, I'm going to die, because you don't have any tools. But when you do have the right tools, when you do have the right support and guidance and the space to go through it, then you really come out the other end much stronger, and then life doesn't really hit you the same way. It's the same as surfing. You never go surfing. I tried surfing once. Oh my God. So much respect for people who surf, because you got to read the ocean constantly. You cannot just say, I tried it, I was great, and I'm done. Every single time the ocean changes, the winds change, the conditions change, and that is life. So placing our bets on something external is still an illusion. Because what has coronavirus taught us? What has this pandemic taught us? People who, launched or opened up a hotel, and boom, within 2 months, the pandemic happens. Like maybe all of their savings of their life went into opening that, project. And all of a sudden, oh, how do we adapt? How do we adapt? How do we adapt? And so it's giving tools. So going back to the question, what does it mean? It means to have the capacity to be resourceful with your ability to know how to react to life depending on what life gives you.
And I think that emphasis on resources is fundamentally, it's an intrinsic thing. That could be an emotional state like resilience or courage, but it could equally be creativity, which isn't necessarily a resourceful state, but just the ability to solve problems or figure out how to do something, or faith at some level. And I've been in that situation on both ends of the spectrum where I've had none of those tools, and effectively I was a recluse for nearly a year, just kind of heightened levels of anxiety, like everything would knock me over. And now I kind of feel like I can handle a lot, because when you do go through that, that's the thing that a lot of people don't really get, that's the positive of any bad situation in life, is that it teaches you to be stronger and tougher and more resilient for things like that in the future. And then if you allow it to be, it's kind of a superpower, because the things that kind of other people are scared to do, you kind of walk into the flames kind of fearless because you've built up those resources. What tips would you give someone to help make them feel more resourceful?
Working with a coach, definitely.
That's
I
the
mean,
plug.
I say no, and I truly though. I mean, truly, whether it's hypnotherapy, whether it's yoga. I mean, you gotta start somewhere. You know, the journey within. There are so many doors, and then the destination is still the same. You know, which is love. Again, I go back to like I'm a lover. The destination is love. Is experiencing and extending the periods in which you feel at peace, at ease, joyful, you know, in connection, in oneness with everything around you and everyone around you. The more that you amplify that, the more that you sustain those levels, you know, the more you feel like life just flows. And it truly is, because working with energy and manifesting is that. It is your vibrational offering to the universe that is going to be met by the things that apparently happen to you. We are creating now in this present moment the conditions of tomorrow and the next day and the next day. If we do it unconsciously, what happens is we are bringing chaos into our lives because we come from a place of feeling non-deserving and whatever happens because we carry the load of our infancy and our childhood. You know, all of those core beliefs that we haven't yet resolved still come with us as our baggage. But the moment that you say, you know what, this is too heavy to carry, let me just, you know, work it, go through it, burn it, then reality opens up in a different way. You know, like right now, last night, I made the decision to stay here in Colombia because there's going to be something called a paro cívico, so like a protest in Bolivia. And sometimes these things can escalate very quickly. And I'm like, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm loving it. Why should I go back and then maybe be like locked in for a whole month because of political unrest? So then I thought, I'm here, I'm going to see what happens. And it's calling for adaptation once again, because it's not like, oh, I have all these tools and then I'm done for life. I never get to practice resilience anymore. No, you know, it is very much like progressive. It's percentual. So you are here. Okay, that's what also the challenges you're going to get in life. So now I'm looking at maybe traveling to Medellin and maybe exploring around Colombia. And I'm like, oh, but you see, I could maintain a mindset of, oh, this is not supposed to go this way. What am I going to do now? Like that. Not in the least. Now I always look at the positive side, the half full glass, you know, but that wasn't always that way. I was in fact very fearful once upon a time, you know, ages ago, when I didn't believe in my own resourceful states. Whereas now I've been through, like you said, I've been through so much, you know, so much. I've recreated, reinvented myself so many times, career wise, relationship wise, country wise, that really not much phases me. Like I know I have a capacity to land on my feet like a cat.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, and I think there is a cultural perception that when people make drastic changes or changes that go against societal expectations, somehow people are having a crisis, somehow people are having a breakdown. You know, there is this kind of pressure on people to be consistent, even if it's not in their interest to be consistent. Stay in a relationship that's not serving them, you know, stay in a job just because it's quote unquote secure and all these kind of things. So the societal narrative is, even if you're not happy, keep doing what you're doing, because at least you know what you're going to get, which is a really odd cultural and societal narrative to have, when the alternative is listen to your intuition, you know, and allow that to guide you away from what isn't serving you towards what is serving you. Why do you think so few people follow their own intuition and follow that kind of inner compass to take them towards these kind of unexpected or kind of new experiences?
I believe strongly that there is a big attachment to thinking, to the analytical, rational mind. So the intuition it's very unknown to most people. Most of the people that I work with, like they can say like, yeah, there was a little voice in me, but we don't give it priority. We don't know how to work with intuition. It is something so abstract because again, it is never taught to us in school. We're taught the periodic table of elements like chemistry. And then who's going to do what with that, you know? But we're not taught what to do when we are in a toxic relationship, how to handle losing your parent, you know, like adversity. Basically, we are not taught how to handle our emotions. And what you're saying is and you work with the subconscious mind, because that's hypnotherapy in itself. And it is so, we are averse to change. We prefer to stay in the comfort zone, even if that feels not so comfortable, because it is familiar. That's why we even go on to recreating dynamics in our relationships that are not really functional, because that's what reminds us home. That's what home was. Oh, mom and dad were always fighting. So love means you fight or sacrifice. This idea that you got married and now you have to, push through no matter what, because the kids, because this, and that. No. So I believe that there is an attachment to the familiar. It's like you said, at least I know what I'm getting. It's this idea. So what in essence that means is that is fear wrapped in layers and layers and layers of narratives of, oh, this and that, and my job and my boss, and I've been here and I've grown. But at the core of it is fear of change.
True.
And once you step outside of that comfort zone, even if it's just a tiny micro step, that's where your gain is at. Because life is a university. It's a university for us to learn how to come back to love, away from fear and back to love.
And I think there's quite a few memes out there. The comfort zone is comfortable, but nothing grows there. And growth comes when you kind of are in unfamiliar situations, or you make tough decisions and you don't know how it's going to be. But effectively, it forces you to learn, to get more resourceful, and that's where that resources come from. As you say, it's like a gym. You have to lift heavy weights to get stronger. You have to be uncomfortable to get more resourceful.
Absolutely. I mean, going to the gym, essentially what you are doing when you are lifting weights is you are breaking the tissue. You are breaking the tissue. And then you let it rest, and then the tissue, and then it grows, and that's how you grow muscles. If you want to grow muscles, you got to do that. And it's the same with life. You want to expand, and we are by nature, we are expansive beings. So contraction, you're either expanding or you are contracting. Energy always is in motion. It's emotion, energy in motion. So there is no such thing as I'm just going to be in freeze mode, which is a coping mechanism, by the way. You either go into fight mode, flight mode, or freeze mode. And so if you think that just by not doing anything, things are going to go away, that's not how it goes. That's another illusion. The ego plays tricks on us. We're either expanding or we are contracting. And life is always calling for expansion. And expansion doesn't always mean pleasure. No, you get pleasure after the growth spurt, like a snake shedding its skin. I bet that it's uncomfortable when it's going through that process. It's sticky and icky and it's gotta go and rub itself against some whatever tree, a bark of a tree, in order to shed the old skin. But that's what nature does. Nature is wise. Nature gives us these cycles of reinvention for us, what we call the crises. And if we are mentally capable of understanding that this is a part of nature that is calling me forth to expand, then it can become something graceful. Think of a birth, giving birth. It's never roses and, they depict it in movies, and it's never like everyone giggling and laughing and popping champagne. It's always crying and sweat and tears and blood. But it's what nature does. That's how a human being is born. And the baby has to go through a canal that is, I bet it's so uncomfortable. That's why we were made so that we can't even remember, because it's so uncomfortable. But then what happens? The moment the baby comes out, the baby takes its first breath in, it inspires. And again, spiritu, inspire. So spirit comes in. And therefore, you are in this world of duality. So to me, it's how gracefully can we dance through these stages, through these transition periods, from archetype to archetype to archetype. And we embrace change as something that is going to continue to happen until the day we die.
Absolutely. You have a very unique energy, a very high level of confidence. It sounds like you haven't always had that. If you could go back in time to a younger version of you and just plant the seed of one idea that you have now, a belief that you have now that you didn't have in your past, what belief or resource would you give yourself that you didn't have back then?
Mm-hmm. The universe supports you. I would definitely plant that seed. To know that fear is a waste. To fear and to be like, oh, I'm all alone in this world, or that no matter what, there is a beautiful word called maktub. I have no tattoos, but I've considered it one too many times. And maybe if I get a tattoo, it would be maktub. And maktub in itself, do you know maktub? Have you heard this word?
I read it in the Alchemist. It is written.
It is written.
Yeah.
It is written. So no matter what, you also are being summoned and called again back to source. So it doesn't really matter. If we don't get it right, guess what? We're going to have to do it all over again, and that's it. And so it's just, we are here to have fun. We are here to enjoy everything, the whole range of emotions. And so that's it. There's been times where I've been crying, and at the same time I'm crying and I'm laughing, and it's like, okay, because it's duality.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think people forget, because I work with lots of anxiety clients, and for them, it feels overwhelmingly negative and something they can't cope with. And I always use a bit of a pattern interrupt. I say, right, I want you to tell me the last time that you died from anxiety. And they think, and it's like, so never. And I said, how many times do you get anxious? And they're like, oh, maybe 10 times a day. And it's like, so every time you were victorious, every time anxiety came along, you won, so if this was a game of sport, this is like 10,000 to you and 0 to anxiety. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a reframe, it's that they can cope, they can handle anxiety rather than be the victim of that. We have gone through a really volatile time over the last kind of 18, 19 months. Obviously you're a coach. What kind of problems or needs do you think are out there more now than there have been in the past? And in what way do you feel as a coach, as a mentor, that you're in a unique position to help people?
Absolutely. Anxiety, definitely, because of people losing their jobs and being, having to go back to live with their parents, having, to face the discomfort. And so definitely that the overthinking mind, which is what gives rise to anxiety, definitely. And the tools that I have, it's like throughout my whole life, not just reading, but all the trainings that I've done and all the things that I've experienced in myself. Because one thing is to learn something theoretically, and it's a very different thing to have been through anxiety, to have experienced depression, to have experienced being in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, and so forth, and having ended that. So definitely the mindfulness as a big umbrella, and it is very much, it encompasses many things, but learning how to work with energy, learning how to quiet the mind, how to not allow, Eckhart Tolle says that the biggest addiction is not alcohol or drugs or, whatever, superficiality. The biggest addiction is to overthinking. Because we do not even question it. Therefore, it is very subtly there all the time, it weaves itself in. And so the ego, I go back to this, and it's not that the ego is in essence the villain, the evil one. I tell this to my clients. It's just, how do we befriend the ego? How do we befriend and take its power away from telling us, this is me, oh, I am this and I am that, and I always do this and I have always done that. Like, we are ever evolving. We get to reinvent ourselves ongoingly.
Yeah.
So definitely, having been through and experienced everything that I assist my clients with, puts me in a position to know exactly, because I empathize with them. When I deal with women who come from toxic relationships and there was one who, she was describing her ex, and I was like, wait, what's his name? Because I literally thought we had the same ex. And she's like, well, whatever. It was Johnny and mine was Matt. And I was like, oh, okay. I almost said, like, thank goodness it's not the same one, but who cares? Like, it could have been, because the dynamic, the pattern is, it's so much the same. It's cut from the same cloth almost, I say, So then in that way, I'm able to, it's like I'm 2 steps ahead. It's like when you go into the jungle, I'm from Bolivia, and we have tours into the Amazon. And they tell you, don't do this on your own. You don't know the jungle. You don't know what can kill you, what kind of animals are there. But you go with someone who has lived there, who has done it, who has trained, who knows, and who can take you. And then you trust them. You trust them with your life, literally. And then you go and you are able to have a good experience and come out of it with amazing pictures and, a story to tell. And it's the same with coaching. I'm able to guide them because I've been through it and I have trained as well. So I have the theoretical and I have the practical. And both of those together, boom, it's so powerful.
Yeah, I
So
love that metaphor. Yeah, it's a great metaphor. Yeah. I use the same metaphor for my clients in terms of the unconscious mind. It's a scary place, but if you know someone that knows their way around, it's easier to do that. Because I think a lot of people think of hypnotists as they have control. And I said, well, if you were lost in the jungle and you knew someone that knew the way out, you'd be happy to follow them. That doesn't mean they're controlling you out of the jungle. They just know the territory. I also like what you're saying about the ego as well, because I think the ego, like everything else you've talked about, also has that duality in the sense that the positive side, the white side, is kind of, it gives people motivation to improve, to grow, to do more, to have more. But at the same time, sometimes it has that almost like Gollum style need for kind of, the precious, the kind of the validation, the approval, all those kind of other things, that is linked to the idea of status and things like that. So it has the positive, but it also has that dark side as well. So the idea of keeping your ego in check, having it work for you rather than against you. Yeah, you want the positives. You just don't want to be a victim of, the fakery sometimes that comes along with chasing purely out of ego.
Absolutely. And it's becoming aware. The work that I do is all the time. I tell my clients, from the darkness to the light. And what is this? From the unknown, from the unconscious to the conscious. The moment you talk about it, the moment you name it, the moment you understand and the pattern, the formula is out there, you can never go back and unlearn that. There is one of the most powerful sessions that I have with my clients is it's part of NLP, what we do, and it's a perspectives exercise, where you get to talk to that. Sometimes it's an external person, someone that they don't dare talk to. For example, it could also be someone who has passed away and they didn't have the opportunity to say, hey, look, this happened and I felt this way. But most oftentimes they talk to the inner critic, which is aspect of ego. And they give it a name, and oh my God, it's just so beautiful because it's like, and she's like a witch and she's got this mole, and it's how people visualize that darkness within. And when they are able to share and say from their perspective, we do it with the eyes closed, and it's like, I'm tired. Like, you never give me a break. Like, you keep pushing me to my limit and I'm exhausted and that and that. And then the ego gets to talk as well, because it's not unidirectional. And the ego oftentimes says, if it weren't for me, you'd be laying on a couch. You can be so lazy sometimes. And so for the person, and they're doing all themselves, I'm guiding them through the exercise. But when they hear, hey, I haven't been all evil to you, it's because of me that you also have achieved this, then there's a beautiful integration there. And moving forward, they now know how to spot the inner critic when it shows up. And so because they've given it a name, then all of a sudden it's like, not today, Hilda, not today. And they go on, and it's such a beautiful way of being playful as well, and like taking away some of the power of like, oh, this is my life and I can't, And some of those egos are like relentless. They will not give them the time of day.
Yeah.
But every single process, every single client has their own experience, and it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's the dynamic, and it sounds very similar. I'm familiar with that protocol. The one I'm more used like that is parts integration therapy, where you've got these kind of different parts, and the key to it is always to realize that whether it's a critic or an ego or this idea of self-sabotage, it always comes from a positive intention. The inner critic is actually trying to protect at some level, even if it's protecting from perceived embarrassment or whatever it might be. They're trying to keep people safe. The ego is trying to drive people forward, but left unchecked, they become rogues, and it can take people in very horrible directions. So I love what you're doing there in terms of the integration element.
Finding that middle ground, then that is the sweet spot, is you befriending the ego. And then you work in collaboration with, as opposed to this is the villain and I am the victim. Anytime you're in the victimhood state, you're going to lose because, oh, poor me, poor me. But when you know, again, from story to journey, that you get to choose every step of the way, then that's very empowering.
It's hugely empowering because you're turning an enemy into an ally. So it's not even that you're just losing an enemy. It's that you get, because if the enemy, let's say it's ego or inner critic, is so influential in someone's life, that means they're resourceful. That means they have power. So if you can turn them into an ally, that's even more beneficial than if you just ignore them. So, it's a fascinating dynamic. And when you explain to people there are multiple parts of the subconscious mind, they look at you like you're weird, but I've done this enough now, and you can see those kind of patterns. People, their faces change when they're in that part, and it is very strange to see. It's almost like the multiple personality disorder, as it used to be called, or now dissociative disorder, but people are accessing almost like different personalities when they're in those moments. How optimistic are you for the future? We've had probably the most volatile time in most of our lives. People are worried, they are anxious. If you're looking into your own crystal ball as to what the future looks like, what do you see happening over the next 5 to 10 years?
Massive up-leveling of consciousness. Massive. I am excited. I am fucking excited because this has been a collective going through a crisis. This collective energy. And because of that, also collectively, we are stepping out of our comfort zone. We are becoming problem solvers, and we are thinking creatively, divergently. So people who, for example, never dared to leave their corporate job, maybe they lost their job, and all of a sudden, you know what? I've always wanted to paint. You know what? I'm great at baking. You know what? I'm going to do it because it's now or never. So people have somehow been put back on the path through discomfort, through the crises, through and I have huge hopes. I am an eternal hopeful because I believe in love, and love heals. And I believe that because I have never not had work. Since I started coaching, I've never not had clients because it's something that people are now perceiving as like, I really want to understand myself better. I want to let go of anxiety. I want to improve the quality of my relationships. It no longer is the working 9 to 5 and clocking in. People have started questioning the status quo, the matrix. And so I believe that people are awakening. It is a collective moment of awakening worldwide. And we are supported, call it the era of Aquarius, if it's a bit esoteric. But I believe that we have the capacity, the communications, globally to make an impact. And again, I go back to, I'm hopeful because it's not just a beautiful speech. We are understanding that the only way to truly make an impact and a difference in the world is from the individual, is every single person becoming bettering themselves, a better version of yourself. And then in that way, you can be of better support for others, better in your communities, and so forth.
Yeah.
So absolutely hopeful.
Yeah, I can feel the optimism, the energy there. And I think, I'm not sure if it was Buddha or Gandhi that I think the quote was, be the change that you want to see in the world. So it has to start from within, because you can't look outwards and say, oh, why isn't things changing? It's like, you've got to start with you, and that creates a ripple effect, because then you're an example to other people as to what that change is. It's been a fascinating conversation with you, Olivia. If someone has been listening and they want to connect with you, they want to work with you, maybe have you be their coach to see some changes or integrate their parts, what's the best way they can reach out and connect?
Yeah, I'm very active on Instagram at the moment. So they can reach me at oliviamercardo.coaching on Instagram. You can send me a DM. I'm happy to do an intro coaching call. Usually I do that in order to see if we're even a match, and how I can support them throughout their journey. So definitely Instagram, or they can go to my website as well, which is oliviamercardo.com. I also have a podcast, and it's Olivia from Bolivia, most iTunes and Spotify and whatnot. But yeah, definitely keep in touch through Instagram. That would be the main doorway.
Amazing. Olivia from Bolivia, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you. My pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again soon for more.
Thank you for listening to Modern Mindset with Adam Cox. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review. Modern Mindset, picking the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours.